I think it's confession time. A couple days ago, I was having a really rough day. A huge opportunity that I was super excited for just fell through completely out of the blue. And when I get stressed, I can sometimes have two reactions, and both of them happened here. Number one is I can sit and stew. And number two is I can find myself in our food pantry downstairs eating one of those little bags of chips. My wife's work gives her those. She takes them home. She doesn't eat them, and they end up in our pantry and they become my stress food, right? So I'm sitting there in the pantry and I'm eating one of these little bags of chips. And all of a sudden I notice the time and I'm about to have a client call. So I set down the bag of chips unfinished in the pantry, right? And I run upstairs to my office right here and I pick up the phone and I dial my client. And they pick up and I couldn't help but laugh. I hear them crunching on something. And I say, hello? And they say, I'm really sorry. I have to be honest. I'm stress eating right now. And it was so funny to me. I was like, join the party. We could stress eat together here, right? And two thoughts really quickly struck me as my clients started talking about what they were going through and their challenge and what brought them to that moment of stress eating. Is the first thought that struck me is, do y'all remember back in school when we learned about the Doppler effect in science class, right? And it's how they spot new planets and things like that, but it's also the thing that when sirens come closer, when a fire truck or ambulance comes closer, the pitch like goes up. It sounds like the frequency goes higher, and then it moves away, the frequency goes lower, right? It struck me that there's a Doppler effect of challenges. Right? So the closer a challenge gets and the more the stress goes up, it's like it distorts everything that we see and everything that we hear. And what that brings about is our natural, like evolutionary response, right? Be it fight or flight or freeze in that moment. And it struck me that a lot of times when I get really stressed out, I tend to freeze. And there is a real scientific reason why we tend to go and eat unhealthy foods in those moments. Because if you go back thousands of years, right? Like if there was a pause and we're in the Sahara Desert, if there's a pause, we're going to get as many calories into us as possible because the lion could come back around the corner and start chasing us. And we need that energy to be able to run away and save our lives. So that all makes perfect sense. It's when that Doppler effect of challenges hits us, everything seems distorted and we go back to our natural response to the world. So that was the first thought that struck me. The second thought that struck me had something to do with something completely else, right? And that is something that I love to do. So full confession, I love to cook. I am the primary chef in our household, and I love it. I love going to the grocery store every week and wandering around the aisles and finding things that I think look interesting. I'm not a huge planner when I cook, and I love that because what's fun to me is as I'm putting together a dish, I am throughout the process, I'm tasting it and thinking, that doesn't quite work. I feel like it needs a little bit more of this or that or this. And I'm constantly trying to add things in as I go. And that is what is so much fun. Cooking is so forgiving. Even if it's not working here, you can always adjust it to make it work in the end. And what struck me is that when the Doppler effect of challenges hits us, it's like when we're cooking saying, well, it tastes like crap now, it's going to taste like crap forever, and just letting it go. And if you think about like those evolutionary responses, right? The fight, the flight, or the freeze, my freeze response is just saying, well, it tastes like crap here, and just letting it go. The fight response could be maybe turning up the heat all the way and just hoping that works out. The flight could be like, well, I'm just going to dish this and let this go, right? But what's amazing is that in cooking, just like in life, we have thousands of options of how we can adjust what we're cooking. So, for instance, we could turn up the heat, right? That might help something. We could turn down the heat, right? We could just let it sit for a while. Sometimes in cooking, not touching it can be the best thing. Sometimes it's adding spices. And once you find like maybe I really blew something. And I'll be honest, that does happen, that I put too much of one spice or another and it's like, oh gosh. And that is when, as we all know, barbecue sauce cures all. Some good old Sweet Baby Ray's will will fix anything that doesn't seem like it can be fixed. But the key is there are always other solutions. In the moment that we feel that Doppler effect hit us, just like when we're cooking and we taste it and it doesn't taste right, it's how can we press pause and think through what are all the options in front of me? Because my guess is there are more options than you realize, but when we're hit with that Doppler effect and everything is distorted around us, it's like we have blinders on, we become myopic. Pressing pause and taking a little taste test, seeing how things are, looking at all the variables can be super helpful in looking at different options. One other thing that can be helpful, as I found with both my client, and it was helpful for me too, is to step out of our challenge and talk to somebody else. That helps us see things in a different light. That's one of the reasons I also love when I feel myself getting stressed, going for a walk. That can be so powerful in helping us see other options, other opportunities. So I'm curious, as you listen to this, what comes up for you and what are your insights here?